All right, I'm back with part two, or probably more closely, more accurately, it's part 1B, because I want this as a bit of an addendum to the last video. I'm going to explain, what's changed since then. I've had a bit of a change of heart in some areas, and of course things wildly escalated in some of the other areas. So I'm going to go through that, and then, we'll see where it gets to again. Okay, so pretty much this is where it left off last time. Some of the colors may have changed, and certainly the name of the document changed, but that's just me messing around. I'm going to try and go through some of the functional blocks or groupings, because it sort of reflects the thinking and the rethinking that I had some of the time. I love this aspect of modeling in Onshape, the ability to go back, branch, experiment, and this is what I call the fearless CAD kind of aspect. It's fearless because I'm doing things in branches, or because it's so easy to change and come back to and try a new approach, that you really become fearless in addressing changes. But anyway, that's just my own feelings on that, but I know that it just kind of resonates with some people. Anyway, so if we go back to the wing surface, I roll back to this thing. So the way that I laid this out is that I had this sketch, which is really the plan form layout, which is being driven by a bunch of parameters, such as this front sweep here. We can play around with that. We can play around with the the root and the tip chords. So we can do a bit of both of that. Let's bring lots of front sweep in and get more like a jetliner, an airliner kind of thing. But okay, so that's all still flexible as before. What I did change is the profiles. Now, I was using the profile generator custom feature before, but I found that the spline quality wasn't that great, and so the curve quality wasn't great, which then travels downstream. So you always want to have curves as good a quality as possible. So I kind of forked the profile generator custom feature and added a bunch of code in here which uses relatively new things, which is the approximate spline function. And so when I'm creating the B-spline curve, I'm actually creating that based on an approximated spline of the points, rather than just doing an interpolated spline through the points themselves. This has this is still kind of beta. It has some limitations still, so I'm not going to release that, although the developer hasn't touched this one for a while, or the person who originally developed this custom feature hasn't touched it for a while, so maybe it's due for a proper refresh by somebody else. Anyway, what it means is that if we have a look at the quality of the curves that are now on this profile, they're very smooth. I've actually used a degree 5 curve in here, which then fit through or approximated the points underlying. Upshot is that we've got a nice curve to play with, and because this curve is going to generate so many things downstream, I want that as good as possible. Of course, if we look at that overall, that's naturally the way that loft works, and the way that these curvatures travel downstream. So there's that. So I use that for the tip and the root. I changed my scheme a little bit for how I'm doing dihedral. So dihedral is applied much later on. But what I did add, as on the advice of some commenter on the previous, on the previous video, is to add washout. So washout is a parameter in here now, and it's a variable, and I can choose a washout angle. Let me show you something extreme here. A 10-degree washout angle. Basically, it twists the profile at the tip, and you can see how that goes. If it goes back to 0, oops. If I go back to 0, and there it's flat. And if I do this one, now the way that I'm doing it is I've actually created a mate connector here at some position along the original chord, and that position is actually a variable as well. So I could put that at 50%, or I think 25% is and this is the rotation, the axis of rotation for that washout. You can see how that's going on. 10 degrees would be way too much. I think often you'll see a few degrees, 4 degrees, something like that. Apparently, actually, what it does, it's it stops the tips from stalling before the root, before the stalling occurs at the root. You don't want that to happen because you've got control surfaces out here, so you want to keep the flow unstalled or pre-stall when you've got control surfaces out here. It doesn't, just a little bit of stability there. So this is structural washout because it's actually happening in the structure. There are other ways of preventing tip stall through vortex generation and other things that, or you know, won't go into that now. Anyway, so that's a change, and because this is happening really, really early, I had to make sure that other features, that basically everything is now keyed off this surface, and I'll go over some of that because this is really the layout. This is the master model of the whole thing. So anyway, so this first block, which I've put into or functional block, which I've put into a folder of features just for convenience, is done now. Now the spars, I believe this is more or less the same. Although what I did do is I added a little bit of extra curve extension using the trim curve option. You can extend or trim a curve. And what I've done is I've extended them a little distance past here. This is so that I can handle changes to the dihedral a bit later on. Anyway, so also when you want to be trimming things against other planes, sometimes it's a good idea to not have them close or exactly on that plane. You want to extend them a little bit more. So what that did is just gave me a little bit of, you know, construction room for later on. You still see this washout is applied, and the frame just follows down that curve on the top. Interestingly, and just very much of a sidebar here, I'm recording this the day after a release, and there's a new feature come in, isoparametric curves. Isoparametric curves are going to be useful in many situations, and I just wanted to put it in here because it's a small plug for a new release of Onshape every 3 weeks. Here we go. Isoparametric curves aren't required in this particular construction method, so let's go on. Now, at all points, let's also continue to flex the model to make sure that those ribs and the surfaces are responding nicely to changes in the root, the washout, the front sweep angle. You know, it's all happening now, and keep our left eye the left-hand side of the screen to look for any feature failures. We want to address them as soon as they come up and adjust our approaches as necessary. Right, so that is that's the spars. Now the ribs, again, this process was fairly similar to last time, although I did change. I changed the sketch a little bit. Let's have a look at that. I'll hide the surface and finished with the layout sketch and finished with that curve. So I'm using the Y button as a shortcut to hide things. The way to remember that shortcut is Y are you visible, and you press Y and it will go away. Shift Y will bring it back. Oops! If you're pointing at the thing that you just eliminated from the view. All right, so what I did change is the sketch in here to make things a little bit more robust. The mate connector for both of these cutouts is really where I'm locating a reference for these cutouts. And if we look at that, again, this is going over stuff I did last time. This is an expression that's based on some measurements and other variables. So the front spar fraction is the distance of percentage of the chord where the front spar is. So it's like 1/3 at the moment, 33% there. And the horizontal is actually a measured variable, right? So I've measured the point from tip to the leading edge to the trailing edge, and I've stored that as a variable here, 339 millimeters. And I'm using that to position the mate connector. Now, the reason this is like that is so that as we taper the wing, that position will be updated as well. Okay, so we've got two mate connectors as our anchoring points for the sketch. Now I changed the sketch to be a little bit simpler, just to manufacture and just to make them into circles. But what I did do is kind of a neat trick here is I created a construction, I'll do another one in front. I created a construction line which is coincident to the profile. So again, if the profile changes, this will change. I have created a let's create a measurement in there. All right. So now I'm going to place a construction circle somewhere on that line and coincident to the end point, and I'll do the same coincident relation constraint down here. So now this gives me a a reference for creating another circle. And I'm going to, what I often do is I do things unconstrained first, like this, and then come back and say concentric, so I can keep control exactly over the constraints that are being added, and then make that some kind of distance like that. So that distance also I'm going to make a, say, 2 times the rib thickness. So again, if we come back and change the rib thickness, because it is a variable, 2 times it. There we go. So that is now going to be a parametrically updatable diameter based on some offset from here. So that's, I just redid what I had done in the original one there, and I did the same thing for the second sketch. Where is it? Mate connector. Second sketch here. And again, I've made this reference circle so that it was coincident with the outside of the profile, and then put, this is, I think I've used 2.5 or 2 times rib thickness again. So as the wing profile tapers down, in this case, these circles cutouts will taper down as well, evenly, according to those. So the idea was to really come back and make this as parametric as possible, and the first video I made was pretty good, but I've made it a little bit more robust, and you can see here now it's still updating to washout angles, which was the new thing, was to make sure that everything is going to, you can see here, that's a nice view there. You can see the washout perfectly, and again we could change the front. Where's that front sweep? Make that front sweep a lot more. Start to see some pretty dramatic updates, and it's always very nice to see this happen. It's very satisfying. Right, so now that those are robust and seemingly changing effectively with all of the possible updates that we want, let's just reset this back so we don't spoil everything. There's some big changes that we'll do later on. Okay, let's make that. One of the designs I have, actually, my glider design actually has a uniform section through it. It's just swept back, and we can recreate that later on. The next block, functionally, is this leading edge, the web trailing edge, the skins over the top, and the web at the front. So I think that is essentially the same. I'm still using a loft. I'm using a loft feature to overbuild what is going to be the trailing edge. And I'm actually trying to mimic here how it's actually constructed, because you don't have a piece just to glue on. It's not coming off a printer. This is coming off a piece of stock that I split and oversized like this, glue onto the back of these ribs, and then shape them down a little bit later. So that is sort of what's driving these feature-based methods that I'm using here. That I'm trying to match what I was doing in real life. So you'll see here, there's a bunch of features. Often before I do some kind of split, I move the faces. Right, so I'm moving these faces here. You can see it. Very subtle at the tip and at the root, in order to do something to line it up for a splitting operation, so that we have a even, smooth, planar split later on. So this is actually where I now do the dihedral allowance. I've got this original surface here, and what I do is I pull in a new variable, and I'm going to transform that surface, rotate it. So let's do that. If we wanted a 6-degree dihedral, you can see here this surface now is angled at 6 degrees. All right. Okay, I could try that in different directions. All right, and it's just affecting that one face there at the moment. And what I do then is I split, and you see why I overbuilt these things, is I wanted to split them all back to that plane there. So that was, that's why it's there. Now I've got this other mate connector which is going to act as a reference coordinate system so that I can place the wing in the upright position with its dihedral taken care of. So that's that, and now we've got, you know, a nice clean split across here. What am I doing now? Now I'm going to move the boundary of. Okay, I'm doing some more. I'm doing the splits on the other end as well. So I've used this technique where I would overbuild or maybe move a boundary and then split it back quite a bit. What I'm going to do here, and I'll get rid of some of those curves. I've created the web as one piece like this, and now I'm going to split it with the skin. Now the skin is this back here. And when I split it with the skin, you'll see what happens. It brings it down to the level, or, you know, even with the flush with these ribs. Yeah, so that's what that sort of two-part operation was. I then thickened the skin to create these balsa panels that I'm going to apply there. Now this is just one way to do it, and then I'm going to split them up, and then, and because this is one big panel at the moment, I'm going to then do a Boolean operation to get rid of the to make this into 3 panels. So that leaves me with 1, 2, 3 panels for the top and 3 panels for the base. We're nearly there, and I've regenerated to here, and I've put this into blocks because these are the real major structural parts of it. From here on in, I've got another a set of features which are the cleanups, right? So these are the renames and a couple of more booleans to the first boolean I'm going to do here. If I just hide, I'll make this translucent. All right, make that stuff translucent. What I need to do is turn this one big web. Where is it? Number 20. Yeah, so I'm going to turn that into individual pieces because obviously that's how it's going to be applied. So that's what this first Boolean does. So now I've got a whole bunch of pieces. You can see here 38, 37, 36. These are all individual squares, or rectangles that will be glued in. What is necessary now, though, is to make sense of the parts list down here, because I've got a lot of things called part 1, and this is where I was doing the auto rename. My auto rename features were coming into the to the fore here. So you can see here I've renamed everything that ribs. I've renamed everything for the skins. That was the last one I did. And then I think the web would probably be the web creates all of those. So now we've cleaned up the tree, a couple of booleans to finish off with, and we're pretty much done. And the last bit really that is to do a little trim operation to make sure that everything is flush, because I'd overbuilt the ribs and the trailing and leading edge. So that's what this final cleanup is. So now we have a nice flush, clean, no more intersections, no more interferences, and now we can do this just as one more test. And because these last few features are the ones that they take a little bit of time, not too much. The pattern is the long feature. These other booleans, maybe they're 200, 300 milliseconds each. So what I like to do is just roll back to, a position which doesn't require me to do all these booleans. Then I can do my flexing. So let's change this to 350. Let's see what, and we're going to go all the way down the tree now, apart from those last booleans. Okay, so that worked. This is the first time I'm trying this, so let's keep our fingers crossed. And have I done the right thing? Yes, I think we're all good so far. We've got our front sweep, we've got different route washout. Let's give it a nice washout on it now. Let's see, yep, that worked. What else is there to try? We have a dihedral. Yes, we have a dihedral. So the next thing that we can try, just to flex this model as far as we can, is change the distance between the ribs. So let's do that. Let's change that to 50 millimeters instead. And we're going to create a whole lot more ribs in there. And yes, we have achieved what we wanted to achieve. So then it's just a matter of rolling to do those final booleans, and you'll see all the names magically change. You know, we've added a few ribs, but they've already been changed as well. Same with the webs. Good, so the very, very last step is the mirror. All right, so I've created a composite part of all of this. I always do this. I should just do this instead, roll to end. All right, so now we have our nicely finished wing. We're looking from the top here. It's got all the characteristics that we wanted and ready for use. All right, so this is where I'll leave it off properly and return to where I really originally was going to go, which is into fuselage and other aspects of the design. So hope you've enjoyed this part of the journey. I think we've achieved what we wanted to do today.